Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton, and today we are taking a look at the personality traits of Sirian Starseeds. So we are going to be continuing our look at each of the different starseed races to take a look at their civilization, what their role has been in galactic history, and what some of the personality traits are of each of the starseed races. So in the last video, we took a look at the Pleiadian starseeds, which of course are one of the most common starseed races on Earth right now. And today we are going to take a look at what is probably the second most common starseed race, the Syrians. And if you know me, you know there is nothing I like talking about more than galactic history and our star ancestors. So today is going to be a lot of fun as we jump into looking at the Syrians, who they are, where they come from, how they're working with Earth right now as we move through the Ascension process, and then finally taking a look at Sirian Starseeds. What personality traits do they have? What are their particular skills and abilities? And all of this is just to help you understand your star lineage better. So if you are someone who has always resonated with the Syrians, maybe you are drawn to their messages, maybe you work with Syrian guides and connect with Syrian beings, today's video is just going to help you know the Syrians a little better. And all of this is with the goal toward, of course, knowing ourselves a little bit better. So to start off, I think it's always helpful when we just go back to the beginning. So let's start by taking a look at the Syrians themselves. Where do the Syrians come from? What is their civilization like? And what is their role with us on Earth at this time and throughout our whole human history? So when we talk about the Syrians, we are talking about one of our closest and most hands-on of our galactic ancestors. So the Syrians come from, of course, the Sirian star system, which is one of the closest star systems to us here on Earth. And you may hear this system referred to as the Dog Star or Canis Major. So that is the star system that the Syrians themselves come from. So Sirian Starseeds then have a soul that originated in the Sirian star system. So when we talk about the Sirian star system, it's set up a little bit differently than we think of our solar system. So the Sirian star system is comprised of either 2 or 3 stars, depending on who you ask, but it's most well known for its 2 major stars, Sirius A and Sirius B. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different life forms that inhabit each of those star systems. But when we think about the Syrians as a whole, and like any of our star races, each of these star systems that we're talking about tends to have thousands of different races, lots and lots of different species. So it can have the same variety of species as we have here on Earth, where of course we have humans, we have our aquatic beings, we have our land animals, and these star races and star systems are no different. So the Syrian system is also a very diverse system. They have humanoids that look very much like us. They have feline beings. They are very well known, especially in the Syrian system, for aquatic beings. So in the Syrian system, you're going to see lots of fish species and species like cetaceans. Our dolphins and our whales are said to come from Sirius. So the Syrian system, like our Earth system here, is very diverse. So when we say a Syrian being, there's not just one particular type of being that we're talking about. So just keep in mind as we go through this discussion that, as with every system, there is a huge range of species. They look different, they exist at different dimensional levels. And so we're always just kind of talking in generalities to just give you something to wrap your brain around. So the Syrians themselves, when we are talking about them as a civilization, the guides tell us that they tend to exist in the 4th dimensional range through the 6th dimensional range. And the guides say that for the most part, we can think of the Syrians as being a 5th dimensional civilization. And of course, there are beings at higher dimensions and beings at lower dimensions. But again, it just gives you kind of a quick frame of reference. So the Syrians are known to be spiritual warriors. So the Syrians are legendary healers and teachers. And the Syrians themselves trace their lineage back to the Lyran-Vegan system. And as we'll be talking about in future videos, the human form in our galaxy originated from the Lyran star system. That was where the human form was first birthed. So the Lyran-Vegan system is really our oldest galactic ancestor, and the Syrians themselves trace their lineage back to the Vegan star in the Lyran system. And so what that means is that a lot of times when we are connecting with Syrian beings, we will see them having blue skin or blue energy. And that is where you see their Vegan roots. So because the Syrians come from the Vegan star, which was once part of the Lyran system, they tend to have blue skin because the Vegans were known to be blue-skinned beings. So they started kind of the galactic strain of blue-skinned beings. So whenever you are channeling or connecting with your guides and see an individual or a being with blue skin, a lot of times this can mean that they are from Vega, the star of Vega, because that gives us the blue skin tone. And that is where the Sirians trace their roots to and their ancestry to. So you will often see with Syrians a blue skin, which just shows their Vegan lineage. So we talked at the beginning about how there are two main star systems in the Sirius constellation. And Sirius A is the star where the planets in the Sirius A system tend to have most of the Syrian humans. So when we talk about the Syrian humans, you can think of them oftentimes as coming from Sirius A star system. And the Sirius A humanoids are generally considered to be extremely benevolent. The Syrian beings from Sirius A have had a long history of working with us here on Earth as benevolent guardians. They have been guardians, protectors, and watchdogs of us as humans as we have moved through our evolution. So when we think of the benevolent Syrians, and most Syrian humans tend to fall in the benevolent category, not all of them, of course, but many of them. And when we're talking about those benevolent humans, we are often talking about them coming from Sirius A. Now, the Sirius B star is the second star that you will hear a lot about when we talk about the Syrians. And Sirius B, the star system, is known to be filled with very watery planets. So the Sirius B system, you will see a lot of your aquatic species. You will see the fish species, the amphibian species, and also the cetaceans, because the dolphins and whales that we know so well from Earth are actually said to come from Sirius B. So Sirius B, you can think of as home to very watery planets. And I think this might be another one of those reasons that we see so much blue color when we connect with Sirius beings. And again, it could be the watery basis, all the water that they have on the Sirius planets, along with, of course, that Vegan lineage that we talked about, which also will give a blue color to the skin tones. And so when I have connected with Syrian beings, I do often see them as having blue skin tone or blue energy. And that goes for whether I am connecting with one of the Syrian humans or whether I'm connecting with one of the amphibious species. So blue energy is one of those signs that you can look to tell if you are connecting with a Syrian being. Now, of course, other star systems also have blue beings. The Arcturians, of course, are notorious for being blue in appearance, and also the Andromedans. But again, blue just can give you an indicator that this being is one of those races that traces their lineage back to the Vega star system. So a little pointer to kind of help you place energies and beings as you start to work with them, that blue is very often associated with Sirius. Something else that you might notice as you start to connect with Syrian beings, whether through channeling, through meditation, or even through your own guides, is that Syrian beings may also appear not only with the blue energy, but also with bald heads. I tend to see Syrian beings as having larger heads, and they tend to be bald when I see them. So that may be another one of those little indicators that you're connecting with a Syrian energy. But not all Sirian energies will show up in blue form. So if you know you are connecting with Sirian energies, working with Sirian guides, another thing you can look to, and something that I noticed when I first started working with Sirian guides in my Syrian galactic family, was that they would show themselves to me as crystalline beings, as these beautiful, golden, transparent beings made out of crystalline energy. And it was so beautiful when I saw this energy for the first time. So this is something else that you may notice as you start to connect, especially with the higher dimensional Syrian beings. So looking for blue energy and also looking for this beautiful golden crystalline energy can be just a sign that you're connecting with your Syrian ancestors or your Syrian galactic family. So we talked a little bit about the benevolent humans that come from Sirius being predominantly from the Sirius A star system, but we do also have non-benevolent Syrian humans. And the guides tell us that these non-benevolent humans are often associated with the watery planets in Sirius B. So again, like we always talk about, you can't lump all the beings from a particular race or system and say that they are this one thing. And while we do generally consider the Syrians to be very just huge lovers and supporters of humanity and guardians of us throughout our evolution, there are Syrian beings that are on the other end of that scale. And what we call them is the non-benevolent Syrian humans. And again, the guides tell us that they tend to come from Sirius B, along with some of those the watery species, the cetaceans, the amphibians, also come from Sirius B. So that's just one way that you can kind of separate out roughly where these different types of Syrian beings might originate from. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the Syrians are one of our most active and hands-on of our galactic ancestors. They have really had their hands in the pie with humanity the entire time we have been evolving and growing into the modern humans that we are here today. And so when we look back at what the role has been of the Syrians on Earth, one of the things that is very prevalent and well known about the Syrians is that they have spent a lot of time working with us hands-on. They have been one of our star ancestors that has been a hands in the cookie jar, boots on the ground kind of star parents, if you think of it that way. And so they were walking around with us during the ancient civilizations, actually teaching and building the actual modern human. The Syrians are known to be master geneticists, and they have been very involved with the creation of the DNA of the modern human. So the Syrians actually contributed their own DNA to make the modern human, as did so many of our other star ancestors. But the Syrians were really very hands-on in this process. And the guides tell us that the Syrians actually left packets of information in our human DNA that would be triggered and opened at certain times in our ascension journey as our consciousness started to rise. And so as we are all going through this collective awakening, this raising of consciousness on the planet, we are starting to activate some of those hidden packets of DNA and information that the Syrians left for us in our genetic code. So they have been very involved in humanity's evolution, and especially with our genetics, and also with teaching us on the ground. So the Syrians have been very present and very well represented in some of our ancient civilizations. Especially, they are known for their heavy role that they played in ancient Egypt. And actually, the goddess that we know as Isis, with her blue skin, is actually a Syrian being. So that's just a little bit of kind of a depiction of how the Syrians were revered in our ancient civilizations. And really, when they came to Earth, they walked amongst the humans, very hands-on, unlike some of our other galactic ancestors like the Andromedans, who kept a very hands-off approach with us. The Syrians, very hands-on, very proactive. And so when they came to Earth, of course, as higher dimensional beings, during the times of these ancient civilizations, they were viewed as gods. And so that's how we see them depicted in so much of our ancient artwork. So a lot of times when you see these blue-skinned beings that walked amongst the ancient humans in our old civilizations, these were the Sirian beings. So that they are one of our very devoted, very hands-on galactic ancestors. And the guides actually talk about how the Syrians were so hands-on and involved with us that it caused them at times to overstep their boundaries and maybe interfere in our development, trump on our free will a little bit, with the goal generally of helping humanity, but it did at times cause them to overstep a bit and maybe meddle, maybe interfere. But in general, you can think of the Syrians as being very loyal protectors and defenders of humanity. And so they are working very closely with us right now as we move through our ascension process. So they have always kind of been by our side, guiding us through this process since the very creation of modern humans. So one of our very hands-on galactic ancestors. So what mission are the Syrians playing right now in Earth's evolution? Well, what you can think of when you think of the Syrians and how they are working with us now is, first of all, they are always still here helping as protectors and defenders of humanity. Because of course, not every galactic species has benevolent intentions for humanity right now. And so the Syrians have kind of been our watchdogs, always protecting us, keeping an eye on us. They are also helping us in upgrading our DNA. And again, this goes back to them being master geneticists and having played such a heavy role in the creation of modern humans, in our genetic makeup. And so the Syrians are helping us now to activate, upgrade, and expand our DNA so that we use more of our actual divine genetic blueprint. So the Syrians are often very connected with how we use our DNA, with the creation of it, the maintenance of it, and the upgrading of it. They are also helping us to use more of our brain power. And so that is something that they were working with us on to help us have access to more of our brain power. Because of course we are told by our scientists that as humans, we use very little of our brain power. So the Syrians are helping to guide us into making better use of our mental capacities. And the other thing that they are known for is helping us activate our interplanetary chakras. So they are helping us access, tap into, and open up some of the chakra points that have been kind of closed off to humanity for much of our evolution, especially as we fell into darkness thousands of years ago. Some of these upper chakras have been closed off to us, not really super accessible. And so the Syrians are helping us bring some of those chakra points back online. So now that you know a little bit about the Syrians themselves, where they come from, what their role has been in galactic history, what are some of the traits of Sirian starseeds? Because as we have been talking about in these videos, a lot of times you can see the same skills, the same abilities in starseeds as you do in the star race itself. So since we have been talking about the Syrians, what do Sirian starseeds bring to the table? Well, Sirian starseeds are very much known for being, like their Syrian ancestors, very reliable, very dependable, very grounded, salt of the earth kind of people. So your Sirian starseed is going to be that most loyal and dependable friend, the one that always has your back, always knows what to do, because the Syrians and their starseeds are no different. The Syrians are very just practical and reliable and dependable. They are also known to be very private. So this is not one of the starseed races that is going to seek to be the center of attention. And again, there are several other starseed races that share this tendency to be a little more reserved, a little more kind of introspective and internally focused. And the Sirian starseeds are going to be one of those. So they tend to not share their emotions easily. And so this is something to keep in mind if you know a Sirian starseed, or especially if you are in a relationship with one, that they are known to not be comfortable in particular sharing their emotions. So this can cause problems for Sirian starseeds in their relationships because they tend to keep their cards very close to the vest. So they are not going to be sharing their every thought, their every emotion with you. And you may actually have to drag their emotions out of them. So if you are friends with or in a relationship with a Sirian starseed, just knowing that this is not the easiest thing for a Sirian being to be emotionally vulnerable will help you a lot in relating to that starseed that you know. So they can be kind of along the same line. They can be slow to trust, and they're going to tend to trust themselves and their inner wisdom over anything that they hear outside of them. So again, it's a good thing to know if you are in a relationship with a Sirian starseed. That privacy, that tendency to hold back, not broadcast their feelings, because communication is key in any relationship or interaction with a Sirian starseed. Because again, they are just not going to be necessarily one who is vocalizing everything that they're thinking and feeling. Think of your Sirian starseeds as being that kind of quiet, reserved rock in your life. They are always going to be there and be dependable, but you're going to possibly have to pull things out of them to get feedback as to what is going on with them. Something else that you may see with your Sirian starseeds is a love of creative personal expression, because Syrians are extremely creative. They love art, they love music, they love sound healing. So anything mystical, anything spiritual is going to be very resonant with a Sirian starseed. So one of the ways that Sirian starseeds like to express themselves is through their personal appearance. And so you may notice this in the Sirian starseeds that you know, that they love to express themselves through the way they dress. So they may be lovers of fashion or have a very unique personal style, or they might like to express themselves through their makeup or piercings or tattoos or body art, because all of this goes to that personal expression, which is so important to a Sirian starseed. And along those lines, one thing that Sirian starseeds really don't like is being stereotyped and labeled. So that personal expression, that individuality is very important to a Sirian starseed. So anything that lumps them together with everyone else is not generally something that they are going to be a fan of. One other thing that you may notice Sirian starseeds really gravitating toward is that they are known to really love fantasy. So whether that is fantasy books or music or TV or video games, that immersion in a fantasy world is something that Sirian starseeds are very, very drawn to. And the guides say that one of the reasons for that is because it reminds the Sirian starseed of their home planets. Because the Syrian planets are said to be home to all of these creatures that we would consider to be fantasy creatures. Unicorns and griffins and sphinxes, all of these creatures that we consider to be imaginary actually exist in various forms in the Sirius system. So again, Sirian starseeds can be very drawn to fantasy because it gives them that feeling of home. It helps a little bit with that homesickness that so many starseeds feel. Other things that Sirian starseeds are drawn to, first and foremost, they tend to be water babies. And again, this goes back to the Syrian system having so many watery planets. So all the Sirian starseeds I know are total water babies. They have to live by the water, see the water, be in the water on a regular basis, or they start to feel very out of sorts. So this is one of those things that is one of those hallmark traits of the Sirian starseeds. And like so many other starseeds, Syrians are very much drawn to nature. And they also are known to have a love of history, in addition to fantasy, which we talked about, but also to be very drawn to any form of spiritual practice. And one of the reasons for this is that the Syrian system is home to the great mystery schools of the galaxy. It's where so many of our ascended masters went through their training, was at the Syrian mystery schools. So because of this, the Syrians have, such a huge wealth of spiritual information available in their star system. So they tend to be lovers of all things mystical, spiritual, anything shamanic, you name it. If it is on the spiritual spectrum, it is going to be something that a Sirian starseed is very drawn to. And finally, one of the last things that you will probably notice in so many Sirian starseeds is that they are great teachers and healers. And this, of course, goes for so many of our star races, but the Syrians in particular are just phenomenal teachers and healers. So if you are drawn to the healing arts, it could be a sign that you are a Sirian starseed or that you are working with Syrian guides, because they are just masters of healing. So that's one thing that you may be, as a Sirian starseed, bringing into this incarnation as one of your gifts is very high dimensional healing technologies, modalities, just different ways to apply what's already known. This is a very Syrian characteristic. So anyway, Syrians, great teachers, great healers. So how do you tell if you are a Sirian starseed? Well, if you are resonating with all of these characteristics that we have been talking about, it is a great sign that you may be a Sirian starseed, or that you are connected with Syrian guides or working with Syrian beings in your own meditative states. But the best way to figure out what your star lineage is to sit in meditation and ask your guides. Your guides, your higher self, can't wait to tell you all about your star lineage, where your soul originates, and how you can connect directly with your star family. And as you do this, you will start to activate all of those gifts and abilities that you bring in as a starseed. And if you are a starseed, it means you are here on a mission. You are here to help the planet ascend, and you have a huge job to do. And so connecting with your galactic family is one way you can start to really activate those incredible abilities that you brought into this life as a starseed. So hope this helps you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.